becoming clear with your why you're doing things, why you want to do things. And that's a big part of what I tell people I work with is, your why helps you stand in your own conviction. Businesses have missions and value statements. I think it's really important to have your own personal mission statement.
In our fast-paced world, it's easy to get swept up in the currents that surround us. But we are the authors of our own life story, and we are infinitely capable of creating the change we want to see within us and beyond. Welcome to Shaping Freedom, a show where we explore and share practical ways to cultivate extraordinary life experiences. I'm your host, Lisane Basquiat. I'm a teacher, entrepreneur, and life strategist. After a career as a corporate executive, I embarked on my own path of entrepreneurship and focused on the human and spirit connection. I come from generations of trailblazing entrepreneurs, artists, healers, and champions of human dignity. This week, I'm joined by Stephanie Mitchell, a wellness provider and yoga instructor that helps corporate spaces that nurture and support their employees. Today, we discuss how Stephanie went from working in the corporate world herself to transforming the corporate world by helping companies place value on wellness and balance in the workplace as a way of avoiding burnout. Since becoming an entrepreneur, she has helped both yoga teachers and corporate employees alike to discover their why while learning to nurture their bodies, minds, and souls. We'll discuss the importance of honoring yourself so that you can in turn honor those around you and spread that healing power to others. Here is my conversation with Stephanie. Hey, Stephanie.
Hey, Lisane. Nice to meet you finally.
I know. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you, first of all, so much for agreeing to come on and chat with me a little bit.
Absolutely.
I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Me too.
Very much. Yeah. And I know that we have there are a lot of synchronicities in our background. So I'm really excited to be able to chat about those.
Yes.
Where in the country are you right now?
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia.
Excellent. Are you from Atlanta?
I am.
Nice.
Yeah, Georgia Peach.
Sweet. Well, let's talk a little bit. I know that I understand that you have had a journey that took you through corporate and that now has you supporting corporate, I guess, from the other side. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your story. And it'd be great to also hear a little bit about like what you're up to today, the corporate wellness and yoga and, the things that you're working on today.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it has been a journey indeed. A really amazing one. I've learned a lot over these last many years. So I went to college in my hometown, and I was always kind of raised with that mentality of you get out of college, you get a corporate job, you work in corporate, you make the money, you marry the job marries you, and that was very much kind of like the baby boomer side of thought, if you will. So that was always kind of the mental state I was in while I was in college. Like, I'm going to get a really great corporate job fresh out of college. It's going to be great. I'm going to climb the corporate ladder. And I graduated in 2011, and the job market was really not in the best place at the time with everything going on. And so it was really actually hard for me to find a corporate job. I graduated with a bachelor in communication, so very broad, but I always knew that like I wanted to do something where I was helping people, where I was making an impact on people. So I worked some odd jobs after college. I actually went back and got a meeting and event planning certificate because I love events. And then I did get my very first big girl corporate job in 2013, and I loved it. It took me all over the country. I was essentially working with college students. So it was an academic honor society that I was part of, and we were kind of an extension of career services. So I got to go and I did a lot of public speaking at events. I helped students with their resume. I basically, really tried to instill in the students I would talk to about the value of really, immersing yourself in the uncertainty, and knowing that uncertainty, though it may be scary at times, it's where a lot is found within yourself, within what you want to do, passion, and all of those things. So really loved my job, went to college campuses everywhere. And then my boss was also an entrepreneur, and he actually sought passion in another passion project of his. So he downsized the company that I was working for. I got laid off in 2015, and I just kind of had one of those now what moments, didn't really know, okay, now what am I going to do? It was so hard to find a job in the first place. What do I want to do now? So I went through the hustle of applying and going to interviews, and nothing was really panning out. So I just made the decision to go out west. I went out to California for a couple months and stayed with a really good friend of mine, and he took me to the Redwoods. I went up to Oregon, just, really explored. And while I was out there, I was doing my own kind of soul searching. So yoga, came into my life in 2007. I took my first class while I was in college, and fell in love with it. I came from a Pilates background, and I really loved the whole mind, body, breath connection that it provided me. So I developed my own personal practice, not even thinking that it was going to be something that I did for a career or start a business. So while I was out there, I was really thinking about, what am I really passionate about? I'm passionate about yoga. I'm passionate about music and travel and helping people just, improve, or whether it's mentally or physically, and just in community. I love bringing community together. So I took my love of yoga, travel, and music and community, and decided to launch a mobile yoga studio. So I came back home. I got homesick, and it was kind of expensive at the time. And I got trained in Atlanta. And then I launched my mobile studio fresh out of my YTT in 2016. And I took it to breweries, actually, around my city, because breweries were popping up everywhere. And I actually worked in one while I was getting trained for, extra money and things. And I just really saw the sense of community that a brewery brought. People, I remember talking to people that were new to Atlanta, and they were like, we're coming out because, we want to meet people, and this is a great way to meet people. And then I looked at the space, and I just started kind of doing some of my own market research. And I just asked, if I led a yoga session here, would you guys, come? And all my regulars were like, yeah, absolutely. So I started out doing beer yoga. And then that created my following. And then I had people coming up to me just saying we're really thinking about doing a corporate wellness program within our company, or we're holding an event and we'd like to add this element of wellness. Would that be something that you're game for? And I said, absolutely. So I just kind of jumped in and, got on phone calls with really big people within the company and asked a lot of questions about what it was they were looking for, and just started over the process of working with several different businesses, learning, what companies are needing, what employees are needing, the employer and the employee. And then I just ended up niching. I niched into corporate wellness. And then I started helping other teachers and wellness entrepreneurs take their passion into the corporate world as well.
I was really interested in hearing about your experience within corporate, and I'm curious to know that, what was the result of some of those conversations with both the employer and the employees? What were some of the things that you found by asking those questions?
Yeah, a lot of the things I found, I'll have to say that there was a lot of similarities kind of across the board. Burnout, I had employers tell me, Like we know that our employees are, they're on they have meetings every day. They're behind the computer all the time. We have some people that don't even take lunch breaks. So from an employer perspective, they really did start to see like a higher turnover rate within their employees. And also just knowing that the turnover was happening because they were so burnt out and that they needed to do something other than just taking a 30-minute lunch, if they even took a 30-minute lunch break. And then from the employees, I got a lot of really great feedback in terms of, a lot of them are working moms that didn't have time to go to the gym or a yoga studio after work. So me coming in, even if it was just once a week, was their time. And that's what they would tell me, like, this is my hour to completely just detach from the day and everything I have going on here and at home. And that their work life was better. They looked forward to it. They would put the class or the workshop on the calendar and say, like, every Tuesday, this is going to fulfill, my day and also the rest of my week. Because I really structure my classes, especially for corporate, to give them nuggets of gold that they can take back to their desk with them so that they can continue breath practices or they can continue some of the movement that we do.
What are some of so the topic of corporate burnout, I think, is one that we talk about quite a bit in our culture,
Mm-hmm.
and very often what I hear in kind of looking at the dialogue and conversations that are happening out there is, lean out and go work for yourself and all of that, which I think is great. And I think that what is missing a lot of times in the conversation around corporate burnout is how to come out of it.
Mm.
When it's related to something that you're doing every day, all day, whether the corporation is one that you yourself have created or whether you're working for another company, it's hard to divorce yourself from that because that is the thing that you're doing to keep a roof over your head and food in your mouth and all of that. So how do you detach yourself or divorce yourself from living a life of consistent burnout when you have when part of your life is really structured around working?
Yeah.
I would love to talk a little bit about the how behind that, what corporate burnout really looks like, because I think that's important as well. And then what can someone do to respond to that in a positive way and in a nurturing way?
Yeah, I think you're really right in terms of the fact that, it's a cycle that people get stuck in. Like I talked to one of my friends who just graduated from college with a public relations degree, and she's working for a radio station right now, and she's just like not happy with it, but she's like, but I can't leave it because it's my consistency. It's my
Right.
she's like, and I don't know what I would do. I'm not sure exactly what I would do. And I think it's really important to, in terms of how, kind of starting small, because it can be very overwhelming to start thinking all of these thoughts and you get caught up with like, well, I'm just not happy with where I'm at, but how am I going to change it? Right. And I think, starting small by really taking time to really hone in on what it is that you're passionate about, what the corporate job that you have had, like your strengths, right? Really honing in on the strengths that you have naturally and that you've also cultivated as well. Because I do talk to a lot of, people in the wellness world about, they also work a 9-to-5 job, but they really want to do wellness full time, but they don't know where to start. And I always start them with their strengths. Like, think about your own strengths and then ask maybe some of your students or maybe some of your coworkers what they see your strengths to be. And think about, all of the jobs that you've had and the current job that you have and what that has brought to your life in terms of your strengths. Maybe you've had to step up and be a leader, more times than you had planned to, and it just kind of came naturally for you to do so. Or, maybe just like a plethora of things that happen in the workforce, like having to help out other coworkers, when they're bogged down with work. So I think it's a lot of just, that mental piece of actually taking time to sit with, maybe not even your phone, but sit with a fresh piece of paper and your favorite colored pen, because color is big for me. And, start jotting down, like, these are my strengths. And I remember when I was in corporate, we would have our, 6-month review with our boss. And to prepare for those, I had what I had on just a Word doc of, like, Steph's a badass list. And I would make note of everything that I did well, and also things in which I felt that I could improve on that list, so that I could go in. So that already gave me the confidence of going into a meeting like that, knowing that, I brought, A, B, and C to the table, but I also know that I could improve in these areas as well. And just really starting to look at what you're naturally good at and what you have naturally become good at because of your strengths.
Mm-hmm. I love that self-inquiry, and I love that you use that yourself to make your own decisions. The question around, like, what are you passionate about? Because very often some of that exhaustion comes from not really feeling like you are in the driver's seat of what's happening. I think it's when you are in a position in your life where people are wanting from you, and you don't feel like it's like you don't understand your why. I think that's where we get into trouble sometimes, or that's where we suffer unnecessarily, when we're in this place of doing all the things without having a connection to why we're doing it or what we're passionate about. And sometimes, I know for myself, I was in corporate for quite some time, and I was on the leadership side of things, or I, built myself to the leadership side of things. And what was helpful to me in those moments where I felt burnt out, because the corporate structure it's a lot like school, where, like, you have to be at certain places at certain times, and you are working within the construct of an organization and what their needs are, because you're all working toward those goals. And there were times where I was simply tired. It'd be back to back meetings all day and not a lot of time to actually get the work done that was generated out of those conversations. I, at the time, was a full-time mother and wife, and my children were school aged. And I found and felt myself in a space of feeling very depleted. Like, I was just, everything was coming out of me, and I really wasn't, and hadn't built up the routines to fill myself back up. And it was a really challenging place to be. And what I got to eventually was a practice of really connecting myself to why I was doing what I was doing. So it's like, okay, why are you doing this? And for me, it was, I enjoyed people. I did project leadership at the enterprise level. And so it would be pulling different parts of the organization and departments that didn't work well together, bringing them together and getting them to align towards some goal. I liked that. I enjoyed the people part of things. I enjoyed leading teams. And I also really enjoyed paying my mortgage. And so I had, my list of, like, why I was doing this thing.
It's part of it.
And it has to be.
It has to be.
Because if you're doing things solely for other people, or if you're finding that a lot of what you do really has nothing to do with what's happening inside of yourself, you're bound to get tired. You're bound to feel depleted and exhausted by that.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought up your why, really coming clear with your why you're doing things, why you want to do things. And that's a big part of what I tell people I work with is, your why helps you stand in your own conviction. So especially when we're getting on the phone talking to some of these heavy hitters in the corporate world, trying to sell them a wellness program, at a pretty high dollar rate. It's like, you've got to be in tune, like you said, with your why, like feeling it, knowing it. Like one of my past mentors told me, your why should make you cry. Like it should give you goosebumps. It should wake you up sometimes in the middle of the night. It should help drive you in the morning. And alongside with your whys, I think it's really important. Just like businesses have missions and value statements, I think it's really important to have your own personal mission statement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
Who
agree.
it is you want to work with. And then there comes the why you want to work with them. So I think that's really important to recite, every day to yourself, and allowing that piece to take you even farther, to expand upon that, to expand upon your audience or whatever it is that you're really wanting to do and bring to the world.
Yeah, I think it's also important to give yourself some grace. I think for me, I have some workaholic tendencies, just full disclosure. I work a lot. I did it when I was in corporate, and I was like, oh, it's because I'm in corporate. It's not true. I do it today. I've been an entrepreneur for 15 years and I still do it. But in that, I think it's really important that we allow ourselves some grace, and we give ourselves a break sometimes. And very often, and I'm kind of staying on the topic of burnout here, very often we just go, 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 and we're not robots, we're human beings. And human beings actually do require a certain amount of care and a certain connection to emotional and mental health, which I think is part of what is so exciting and helpful about the work that you do, is that it really meets people in a space where some of the routines and practices are not the healthiest just for our minds and bodies. And being able to bring some of that comfort, being able to bring an hour to a mother who also works full time, supporting her and holding space to have that 1 hour a week when she focuses just on herself and it's just about her practice and, her time with herself and her spiritual connection. I think that is really beautiful work and so helpful. When I left corporate back in, I so happen to have left corporate back in 2008. And the entering CEO, I worked for a financial services company, and the CEO who entered right around the time that I was leaving was someone who, in this, predominantly kind of like get it done, it was super corporate, financial services, and work, work, work,
Hustle,
and
hustle,
no time for
hustle.
hustle,
Yeah.
all that. What was really beautiful was I had the opportunity to kind of see an organization have the potential to step into a what now moment of their own, because the entering CEO was someone who had someone come and lead a practice for him every morning at like 4 o'clock in the morning before he started his day. And that was really exciting to observe, because it's like, wow, what happens when the head of this organization actually embodies wellness for himself?
It's inspiring.
Right. And then how does that then permeate to the rest of the organization in understanding that the priority, what it can look like when your priority is taking care of this first, taking care of you first, and then doing all the things that, are part of working in a corporate environment.
Yeah, I think that shows itself just a great amount of strength, like being able to do something like that, like at 4 o'clock in the morning before you even start your day. I think that just really, it sets a great example. And I find that story in particular that you shared to be super inspiring, because I think that it's just like with corporate and the way that I kind of look at it, there's so many people in the corporate world, And if we're able to, impact them with this mental and physical and just overall awareness of health, it's going to have a trickle down effect through the rest of society. So just like him setting that own standard for himself, and like you guys as employees seeing that, knowing that, I think it just sets a really good tone to, well, maybe that's something that I should also focus on. I mean, if our head person is doing it, focusing on self, because, like you kind of mentioned before, corporate becomes a lot of people pleasing. Like we're just trying to keep the boss happy. We're trying to make sure that our fellow coworkers don't get mad at us for, something not being done in a timely manner and what have you. So that's very inspiring that to hear that. And that's why I love a lot of these companies that I've worked with and continue to work with, is that, they really see the value of having that break, having that time for these employees to give themselves some grace, to give themselves some rest. It's like one of my chiropractor friends, she tells me, rest is the new hustle. Like, taking that time to just, tune out all of the outside stuff that you have going on, and protect, go inward if you can, or, even if it's just physical stretching. I mean, it's something that's going to bring something so much more to your day than a lot of people do realize.
I think it's also really important to do those things out in the open, which I think was part of what was so mind-blowing with that situation that I referred to, because I worked in corporate, in financial services, which was and still is, a predominantly white male environment. It was very masculine, the practices and the way that we operated in terms of, even back then, which today I look at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, but it was like, you wore blue and, blue and black and whatever. I normally didn't, because that's just not my style. But, it really was an environment that was very like blue and black and gray. And, you do things the way that they're always done. And so what that created, or my observation within working in these environments, was that it created almost a rejection of human need and what we need to actually be able to operate at the levels and perform at the levels that we were expected to perform at, which is why I loved like all the work that Stephen Covey did many years ago, because it really was about like, you are the golden geese that's laying the golden eggs. You got to take care of you, and he said it in that way. But what I observed was a lot of almost shame amongst people, my colleagues, for getting massages or, taking yoga. Like you wouldn't say, well, I'm going to go take lunch and I'm going to go do yoga during lunch or get a massage, because it would be seen as a negative thing, or slacking off, or one of those things. So the fact that today it is more integrated, our humanity seems more integrated into what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, it helps people to then acknowledge that and honor that within themselves, the need to go and, practice for an hour,
right,
as a mother, for example.
Well, I mean, it's all a form of personal healing, even if you don't go into it looking at it that way, but you are like healing yourself with every practice, with every breath practice you do, every class you take. And, by you as the individual healing, you are also therefore healing others, because it's going to come out, it's going to come through you as more self-awareness, as more, probably more inner peace. And like, these are some things that you don't even necessarily realize, but you're cultivating that by giving yourself the time, allowing yourself the space to really take that time for yourself, because then you're able to nurture everything else more effectively, whether it's people, whether it's a proposal that you have to write, you're not necessarily as on that autopilot, like we talked about with the go, 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 you're actually taking more time for that rest and digest. And so much creativity comes from that, it's really amazing. And the work I've done with corporate has been some of the most rewarding work I've done in terms of, the reviews that I get of just having a better day, going home and managing your kids better because you had that hour break. Or, even if I wasn't there in the office, like I said, I give them, tactful things that they can practice. They take that into account. I always tell them, I say, you block off time on your phone for all of these business meetings, block off 5 minutes a day to stand up, to breathe, whatever you love from this practice that we're doing, whatever it is that we're focusing on, like take a piece of that and start integrating it into your everyday. And then before you know it, you have a personal practice that's going to help keep you grounded when, say, the yoga teacher, isn't right in front of you. So and being able to do work better, being able to get through the meetings more clear headed, maybe having a brighter idea than you maybe would have had if you had just been sitting at your desk all day. So yeah, it's really incredible, the impact that it has on the individual, and then how that impacts other people as well.
So if you don't mind, why yoga for you?
Why yoga for me? Well, I will say that I felt even in my college years, I was very stuck in that fight or flight kind of mode. Being a student, working, paying rent, also trying to be there for my family, my friends, things of that nature. And when I look back on it now, I realize the stress level that put me in, but I don't think I really realized it then, because I was like, this is just what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to be this way. Yeah, I was in it. But I really think, like, in terms of just being physically active, I'm big into that. Always loved being active. And the first class I took, and I mean this, like, I was hooked. Like, it literally touched me. Like, I felt a sense, and I remember it because I remember the teacher. I remember where I was in the class. I remember the color of my mat. I remember how many people were in there with me. And I just remember at the end of it feeling an actual sense of release, like an actual sense of that breath. That last exhale that I took while seated was, wow, everything just rolled off, and then I was able to kind of start fresh after that and go to my next class. And I just remember starting to kind of feel like I was walking on clouds. I just felt so much more clear-headed. And it really impacted me from a physical, mental, and even spiritual, especially later on, level. And I think it's also it's more accessible than people think. You'd be surprised. Well, you probably wouldn't be surprised, but so often, when I would go to networking events and promote my business, I would tell them what I did, and people would be like, oh, I can't do that because I can't twist into a pretzel, or I can't do a handstand, all of these things that unfortunately sometimes social media portrays it as. And I just tell people, I'm like, well, that's not the purpose of it. I'm like, you coming and showing up, being on the mat is the practice, because you're actually showing up for yourself and becoming aware. And there's like yoga, there's not every pose is for everyone, but there are so many elements of the practice that you can play with and, create something that is going to be something that nurtures your body, mind, and soul. So I just think it's something that, not only it had such a great impact on me that I wanted to share that impact with other people. And that's really why I love it so much.
Yeah, I think my experience with yoga is that it is that quiet moment to spend with myself. And you're right, it's not. And there are times where and I haven't practiced yoga as much since the pandemic as I did before. And I feel the difference. But what I love about it is that I'm always welcomed on the mat. I'm always there to welcome myself. And sometimes I'm welcoming myself with, wow, you really haven't been, let's connect a little more deeply. And sometimes it's just like, let's play, let's try this thing out and see how we do. And last week, this was hard, a pose was hard. And maybe this week, let's see what's happening. And so that's what I really love about it, is that it's not a competitive thing. It's more about coming to the mat and connecting with yourself and just having that time carved out for whatever comes out of it.
Exactly.
And sometimes you're in child's pose for 50% of it. That's okay. It's okay because you're there.
Yeah, it's your own expression. Yeah, your own expression of, and it's a good radar of, where you're at. It's a good way to tell where you are both mentally and physically, because it's like, if you get yourself into a pose and you start just talking bad about yourself, that's more of a mental release that might need to have more focus in that moment. Or if it's stiffness, if it's actual physical stiffness, really being aware of that and maybe where you need to go first before you get to the next element of it. So really great self-awareness.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that I would love to make sure we hit on. One is, I know that you've done a lot of work in Atlanta around around creating alliances, strategic alliances, I'm assuming, or partnerships that help you help you and them to really introduce yoga in a different way, to make it more accessible. Can you share a little bit about that, what that looks like there's how that experience has gone?
Yeah. So my strategic partnerships, there's been so many different organizations and causes and businesses that I have partnered with. And all of it's been so rewarding. And I've learned so much from a yogic perspective and also a small business perspective as well. And I think one of the things that I love most about it is how excited me and, the people I'm talking to. So like the American Cancer Society, for instance, they're one of my strategic partners, and we would do Namaste yoga events throughout the city, or Namaste Cancer yoga events throughout the city prior to the pandemic. And, they loved my concept. I, of course, am passionate about what they stand for. And when I partner with these people, it's the I guess, for lack of better words, like the cross promoting. Like, we get excited about it. I share my ideas, they share their ideas, and then we create this piece, whether it's the flyer, the promotional pieces of it, and the conversations about how we're going to promote it and how we're going to do tickets and stuff like that. It's a very empowering feeling. And yes, changing the way that people kind of see it and look at it. I mean, like hosting yoga events at breweries, one of my main objectives with that was to get more men on the mat, because I was like, men need to do this too. But men oftentimes have that mindset of, well, I don't want to look, too feminine or whatever. But, it's like you do a yoga class and you get a pint afterwards. It's a little bit more enticing for them to come. And then when they do come, they see that it's something that's manageable for them to do. So yeah, really changing the environment. Like, it doesn't always have to be a yoga studio. Like, yoga studios are great. They're beautiful. They're wonderful. But getting outside, doing it in nature. And that's a lot of these events that we've put on. We've led them in parks. We've led them in event spaces. And I think what's so great for me as a small business owner is, it can be me the American Cancer Society, and an event space that we hosted at. And all three of us are helping one another. We're building that community with our communities. We're cross promoting. We're helping business. We're drawing more awareness to a really great cause. So it's those strategic partnerships have really been what catapulted me into, working with businesses like Whole Foods and AT&T, and some of the larger ones around the city. So, I mean, it's been dynamite for me personally, for my practice, and as a business.
I understand that you also, which is very interesting to me because I do that work as well, that you support local yogis in helping them to accelerate their business.
Yes.
Helping them to make their business profitable.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in hearing about that experience and, how that goes for you and for them.
Yeah, that has been it's so near and dear to my heart. It's been very rewarding. Because I don't mean to get emotional, but the teachers and the wellnesspreneurs that, I work with are those that come to me and tell me that they're giving up. They're giving up. They're going back to doing something that they don't really want to do. Or, they also have even harder stories than that of, I have kids. I can't, going through all this rough time. I can't make it work. I can't support myself. Like, I just know that this isn't going to amount to anything. I know that I can't do what I'm most passionate about. That's where a lot of these conversations start. And, again, there's a lot of mindset shift with that. And that's one reason why I love the calls that I get on with some of these teachers interested in our program. Because on that call alone, I mean, that's just a time where we get to know each other, where I get to know where they're coming from, to see if I can help, or if I can't help, to point them in a direction where maybe they can get help, because I have made so many connections with people. So it's been super rewarding, and I work with teachers all across the globe. That's definitely the bright side of the internet and having Zoom. Is being able to connect with teachers, not just in my Atlanta area, but in England and Germany and Europe, like all across Europe and Canada. So a lot of times, these people, these wellnesspreneurs, yoga teachers, they come to me very lost, not really knowing what the next stage is. And some of them have had success, and now it's plateauing, and they're just like, I don't know what to do. So we really strive to get that mission statement in line. We redirect them back to their why, and maybe it's changed. Maybe the way of doing business before isn't the way of doing business now. Like, we have to be able to adapt and overcome. So for me, really digging in and diving in and doing some of that clarity and mindset work, which is where we always start, is very rewarding for me. And I typically learn a lot about myself and where I'm at in my business through working with other people with that. And then for them, it sparks the hope within them. And then they really do redirect back to their why. And like, no, like, I know what I'm doing. I know that I'm a great teacher. I know that I'm a great business person. I just need to really connect to my passion and why it is that I'm doing what I'm doing. And then they flourish. And then, just like I said before, that why helps you to stand in your conviction, right? So when they're confident in that, they're able to have these conversations with people. They're able to go out to networking events and call themselves a corporate wellness provider with total conviction, because they know that they have something to bring to the table. And it's great too, because it's creating, again, a community of yoga teachers, and we're all really on, the same path. We experience all the energy put into putting on a workshop and then no one showing up, or, going after a corporate client and then it not working out, like all of us can relate, but then all of us can also help one another. So even though I'm the leader of the program, like I really, a big part of the program is community. And these yoga teachers being able to interact and talk with one another, and also wellness entrepreneurs as well. We've kind of branched out into that territory, taking it from just yoga teachers to, people that are in the wellness industry altogether. So it's been super impactful, and it's grown my business in the sense of it's helped me really discover, like what I need to work on, maybe what I'm doing really well, just like that back in the corporate world, what I'm doing really well and what I'm bringing to the table versus, okay, this is where I could improve. And I'm improving for myself, and I'm improving for the people that I'm serving. I'm not improving for a boss.
Right.
So it's been great. It's been a great journey with that.
I think community as you're building is probably one of the most important things, even over resources sometimes. One of the things I own a co-working space and business accelerator in Carlsbad, Harrow Hub Carlsbad. And it really is about that. It's community and support and resources for primarily female entrepreneurs. Because what happens a lot of times is there comes a point where you start to realize and recognize that you're in a relationship with the decisions in your life just as much as you are in relationships with people. And so, like you're mentioning, you have these clients that come to you or other business owners in the health and wellness field, and they're feeling tired, or they've been doing something that has now plateaued for them. And it really is about recognizing that you're in a relationship, even with that business. And so for them to have you and a community of people that can help them to maybe see things a little bit differently, or to take on a new perspective, for what it is that they're delivering and doing. Or sometimes it's simply allowing your community to pour in to what you're doing, to give you like a fresh perspective, where sometimes things are so close to us that we can't even see them, so having that third party or having that community that can say things like, hey, I think you're doing great. Maybe if you just make a little shift in your marketing, or maybe if you reconnect to why you're doing this to begin with, or maybe if you create some partnerships, that might help you to brighten the relationship a little bit.
Yeah.
Add some fire to the relationship.
Absolutely. And, I'm big on, and this is within the program too, of, manageable action steps. Like as entrepreneurs, as entrepreneurs in general, regardless really what field you're in, I mean, you sometimes just focus solely on the big picture because it's like, that's where you want to go. And like, you need to have space for that. And that needs to be up here. But you've got to take action steps to get to that. And so many of my clients come to me and their to-do list is just, I'm like, well, what are you currently working on? What's working, what's not working? And their to-do list is just so saturated. And I'm like, well, the first thing we can do is break this up into bite-sized chunks. That way you can actually see your progress and scale your growth. When you're not looking at everything from such the big picture, and you're kind of breaking it up into manageable pieces. Because, a big thing for the clients that I work with is, they're like, well, I don't know how to talk to a corporate leader about wellness. Like I'm nervous about that, like how do I even do that? And first of all, again, goes back to your why, goes back to your mission, why you're doing it, standing in that conviction on your path, on your journey. But we break it down into just simplified questions to ask, like asking them questions, like approaching the conversation in a good headspace, being heartfelt, and just talking about the company culture, talking about where they want to go. Maybe asking, what are some of the things you've been seeing lately among employees? How is it going? Just taking it from that caring and nurturing standpoint, as we are as yogis and as people in the wellness world, And when you get stuck and you don't know what to say, I mean, I always just ask another question, to elaborate on what we're talking about. And then I'll have that moment of clarity of kind of where we need to go with the call. But being prepared, definitely is good. And I always, we always do market research before. I always tell my clients, we draft this mission statement in the beginning of the program for you to recite every day. You need to go and read the mission statements of other companies too, to see how they align with what it is that you're wanting to do and what kind of impact that you're wanting to have. And when you know more about the company, you're more confident when you hop on the call, So
I think it's also important that understanding that you are interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. And I think sometimes we get into this space, this headspace where we're like, I don't know all the things. How am I going to have the conversation? But ultimately, you don't have to know all the things, just being curious and finding out the information that you need to have so that you can create a program that meets their needs is a great place to start. With, like you mentioned, having your mission statement and, being prepared, is important. But it's also more about asking the questions and allowing the conversation to happen and trusting, that you are standing in the conviction of what you believe, just in the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because those questions, I mean, when you just, like you say, when it's just kind of asking those questions, coming to it in a nurturing type of way, you discover so much more than you realize, than you even thought. And then, those questions give you knowledge or maybe pose, more questions that you didn't even think to ask before. And it's same of them,
So, Stephanie, how can a person learn more about you?
Yeah, well, I have a few different resources. So first, my website, it's therollingmatadventure.com. There, you can find out more about our mentorship program, our community events, some of the corporations we've worked with. There's some reviews on there to check out. And then my Instagram is Rollin, no G, Yogi. And that's a really great resource. Posts that I create, I really try to bring as much value as I can, giving little tidbits of information, just providing support through the written word. And I have a Linktree link, which has a link back to booking a discovery call. Also a link to other podcasts that I've been on with other topics that we've talked about. And then of course we have the Elite Corporate Yogi program, which is just a really amazing program that kind of has its own, link for it, but you can also find that, through my website as well to learn more about what we're doing with those teachers and wellness entrepreneurs.
Are those the people that should be reaching out to you, teachers and wellness entrepreneurs?
Yes. Yoga teachers, people in the wellness realm that are wanting to, maybe add another branch of business, or maybe they've always been curious about what it would be like to take their services into the corporate realm. That would definitely be people that would want to reach out and learn a little bit more about what we have going on. Because I've been running it this will be its third year. So it's been going strong for a pretty good while now. And again, it's another place to connect with other people, other wellness entrepreneurs and yoga teachers to learn more and get more feedback. Yeah.
And if I were in corporate and felt myself in a place of burnout or just simply wanting to bring the opportunity to practice closer, what should I do?
I mean, I would love to have a conversation about that as well. I do, from my corporate wellness classes that I've done and workshops that we've led, I have acquired private students from that. And if my calendar's ever full, I also know many other amazing teachers that I could place with people looking for specific things. So, yeah, that would definitely also be a discovery call to get to know you and get to know kind of where you're wanting to go and the shifts that you're trying to make, but you just kind of get stuck. So
fantastic. Is there anything else that you want our audience to know?
I just want you to know that you can do it. If you are wanting to transition, if you are, in the corporate world and you're really trying to come out of the corporate world, or even if you're in the corporate world and you're not trying to come out of the corporate world, but you're trying to improve work-life balance or some sort of quality of life, you can do it. And just remember to take a step back and start small. Don't feel like you have to make a ton of drastic changes all at once. But, start small and start with that why piece. Start with those strengths and read them every day. And you'll discover that, you're more capable than you realize.
It's wonderful. Stephanie, thank you so much for taking time out of what I know is a very busy calendar.
Thank you.
To come and speak with me. I've enjoyed this conversation so much, and I've gotten lots of tidbits out of it, including the questions, the self-inquiry, which I really appreciate you sharing.
Yes.
So thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining me this week and for listening in to my interview with Stephanie. I hope that with Stephanie's guidance, through what she shared, that you're inspired to explore your own why. Whether you work in the corporate world or not, burnout affects us all. Remember to find your strengths and to nurture them. And remember that starting small is far better than not starting at all. If you'd like to learn more about Stephanie's path to corporate wellness, check the show notes for a link to her website. And thank you, as always, for listening to the Shaping Freedom with Lisane Basquiat podcast.